Good evening, everyone. What a wonderful evening, and thank you so much for joining us to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Jewish Foundation of Memphis. This isn't exactly the format we were hoping to have as we celebrate 25 years, but given the circumstances, glad that you were able to join us. Thank you so much to our corporate partner, SunTrust, who has been a wonderful partner of Jewish Community Partners and the Jewish Foundation of Memphis for many years. And also to our professional team, Sarah Vanderwald and Lisa Schroeder, for their incredible work in pulling this event together. And to our 25th anniversary co-chairs, who you will hear from shortly, Sandy Blockman and Charles Jelinek. So I'm going to ask everyone to make sure that they stay on mute. If you accidentally turn that on, please be sure to turn it off. If you do that, then whoever is speaking will be spotlighted on your screen. So it's really incredible to think about the progress our community has made over the past 25 years in creating a culture of legacy and endowment giving. Starting with just 4 organizations, Federation, the JCC, Jewish Home, and Jewish Family Service, the leadership of these pillar organizations knew that it was important to focus on their future and that by joining together, they could create a resource with the professional expertise our community needed to launch a serious legacy and endowment effort. It wasn't long until 6 more agencies joined in, creating a true, total community collaboration. I want to also acknowledge those organizations, Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth Congregation, Baron Hirsch Congregation, Beth Shalom Synagogue, Temple Israel, Bornblum Jewish Community School, and the Margolin Hebrew Academy, Feinstone Yeshiva of the South. I can imagine the excitement it must have been for those who were instrumental in our founding. Our first board president, Ronald Harkavy, and our first executive director, Paula Jacobson, along with many community leaders, were so wise in focusing on our future. Over the years, we would work closely with each of our 10 partner organizations and their appointed board members, helping identify prospects, writing articles, writing grants, engaging in events. This critical partnership really came together when Memphis was chosen as one of the first communities to be part of the Harold Grinspoon Foundation's Life and Legacy Program. The National Director, Arlene Schiff, is with us tonight. Thank you, Arlene. What an amazing effort this was. As a result, more than 500 legacy commitments were made and will be realized in the years ahead. In recent months during this pandemic, it has been gratifying to be able to step up our support of our Jewish community. Our donor advised fund holders have made numerous grants to cover items such as iPads, PPE, and laptops. And large grants have been made from foundation funds to support the increased need for security and additional staffing aimed at keeping our most vulnerable community members safe. There are so many people who have been part of our history, and you know who you are. Our board chairs have been the best of the best. I am so honored to say that I have worked with each and every one of them. Our first was Ronald Harkavy, an amazing leader who was passionate about endowment and was never late. L.R. Jelinek came next, a master salesman who taught me how to close a deal. Jerome Makowski, the leader of all leaders, whose vision helped create our teen philanthropy program, B'nai Tzedek, which has been one of our most successful efforts. Nat Landau provided quiet and firm leadership, helping us strengthen important relationships with our partner agencies and serving as a strategic partner in securing matching grants from the Jewish Funders Network, one of which resulted in the launch of Shalom Shuttle for Jewish Family Service. Rana Newberger, who was such a mentor to me and founded our legacy program in our endowment book of life, which you see here behind me. Nick Ringel came next, and under his leadership, the foundation received its first gift of non-cash assets, an art glass collection, which would be sold in partnership with Heritage Auctions to create a fund to provide prescription drug assistance. Our beloved Kay Saslowski came next, whose vision was instrumental in launching our life and legacy effort, which would change and strengthen our community. Sandy Blockman's leadership brought tremendous credibility and technical expertise to the foundation, and he was instrumental in helping support the creation of our first family foundation, the Bells 2008 Foundation. Under his leadership, we expanded our professional advisory group and are proud to now have 100 advisors across all disciplines as our partners in promoting charity giving. Ken Steinberg stepped in as our leader at the right time as we were transitioning to an operating partnership with Memphis Jewish Federation. And Charles Jelinek became our first second-generation president, helping to carry on the important legacy of his family in leadership and in giving. He has continued to expertly guide our investment committee, which now oversees more than $100 million in assets. Our current president, Anthony Morrison, embodies what it means to be a legacy leader. His enthusiasm comes through in everything he does. Thank you, Anthony, for leading our organization during such an important time. So much of our work revolves around partnering with individuals and families wanting to make an impact through their charitable giving. It has been such an honor to work with hundreds of families over the years to establish donor-advised funds, designated endowment funds, memorial funds, and family foundations. Grants in excess of $80 million have passed from the Jewish Foundation to charities around the world, $50 million to our local partner agencies. I'm also proud when thinking about how we've expanded our menu of ways donors can support their favorite charities: cash, securities, retirement assets, life insurance policies, and even real estate. Special thank you to Michael Greenberg for his leadership in this important area. You name the asset, we can help you. For all of you who have partnered with us in this way, you know how instrumental Sherry Gadberry has been to our operation. After more than 20 years serving in her role as the primary contact for all of our fund holders, she is still going strong. Sherry, we would not be where we are without you. Thank you for being an instrumental part of the Foundation's history. So obviously it's impossible for me to cover everything we've accomplished in the 8 minutes I've been given. So I'll end with 2 things. First, please take the time to read through our 25th anniversary book, which is a beautiful tribute to the impact of the Jewish Foundation. I know it will inspire you to consider your own philanthropy. Second, take to heart the beautiful words you are about to hear from our wonderful guest, Rabbi Cohen. Consider the life of legacy you wish to lead, and do not hesitate to call on me, Sherry, Sarah, or our newest team member, Larry Schaefer, to be your partner in carrying out your legacy. Thank you for the honor of being your professional leader for 20 years and for the confidence you have in our important work. So now it is my pleasure to turn the program over to past president and co-chair of the Foundation's 25th anniversary, Sandy Blockman.
Good evening. Thank you, Laura. I'm Sandy Blockman, and along with Charles Jelinek, we are both honored to serve as the co-chairs of this year's 25th celebration of the Jewish Foundation of Memphis. In just about 4 weeks, as we approach Rosh Hashanah, it's fitting to note that in the key prayer of the day, we make special mention of what are known as zichronos, remembrances. And in the opening passage of this section of the prayer, the standard text reads, Upoke kol yitzurei kedem, which is translated, and you remember the judgment of all the people who've lived since creation. The commentators note that even those who've already died are included in the judgment of the day. They explain that one's actions often have an impact which continue for several generations. And for example, a teacher affects not only the students directly, but also their descendants. And a writer of scholarly works can affect all future generations who learn from their writings. This theme is effectively the topic of our keynote speaker this evening, Rabbi Daniel Cohen, who is a perfect fit for our 25th anniversary. What I don't want to tell you is that Rabbi Cohen grew up in Atlanta and that his wife is from Charleston, South Carolina, and they're both products of the South, and that gives us a special connection to him. I also don't want to focus on the rabbis receiving his smicha from Yeshiva University and his ordination, and also from the Azrieli Graduate School. I certainly don't want to tell you about Rabbi Cohen serving as the senior rabbi at Congregation Agudas Shalom in Stamford, Connecticut, which happens to be the largest modern Orthodox synagogue in New England. Rabbi Cohen, what I want to tell them is that when I introduce somebody, I really want to know who I'm introducing. And the person I really wanted to speak to was your mother. Unfortunately, that's not possible. So I made a few discreet and maybe not so discreet inquiries of who is Rabbi Daniel Cohen. And what I found out is that Rabbi Daniel Cohen is a genuinely good person who performs tremendous acts of chesed and kindness. So he not only talks the talk, but he certainly walks the walk. Rabbi Cohen, may you and your family be blessed to continue your good works for many years. In 2016, Rabbi Cohen wrote and published a book, What Will They Say About You When You're Gone? Creating a Life of Legacy. Many of you in the audience should have received a copy of this book. And inside the book is a bookmark, which I would now like for you to take out and along with a pen. In the days before this pandemic, Rabbi Cohen traveled across the United States, across the world maybe, inspiring audiences to reconsider the pace of their lives and to live with a sense of urgency and purpose. Now, he is here with us virtually, and I am honored to hand over the proceedings this evening to Rabbi Cohen.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction. And I truly appreciate the research into my family. And it's great to be with everybody, not only virtually, but I feel that we're really together tonight. Coming from the South, I feel definitely we're part of the same extended family. I want to thank Sarah, who I met a number of years ago at Life and Legacy, for inviting me. Laura, you as well. Sandy, for your warm welcome tonight. And as you bless me, I want to bless the Jewish Foundation of Memphis this evening, 25 years strong, but God willing, God will continue to shine his light upon you, and you will really see much blessing, God willing, in your community for many, many years to come. And I want to thank everybody for joining again tonight. And first, of course, during this time, just offer a prayer for a moment of healing for those that are ill in our community. And we're, thank God, blessed to be here this evening, but God should grant each and every person who needs a refuah shalema, a speedy recovery, a full recovery. And also acknowledge tonight those who are helping us, the first responders, for whom we owe such a debt of thanks. I want to begin this evening by sharing with you a story. Stories about Alfred Nobel. Alfred Nobel, we're all familiar with, is the one who endowed the Nobel Prize, for which many generations have been the beneficiaries. But we're not necessarily always aware of what the backstory is. One day, Alfred Nobel's brother, Ludwig, passed away. And on the morning of his funeral, he opened up the obituary, and rather than see the obituary about his brother, He saw an obituary about himself. He didn't like what he saw. In there it said, "We're sorry to announce the passing of the doctor of death, the purveyor of dynamite." And in that moment, he asked himself, is this the way that I want to be remembered? Do I want to be remembered for accumulating wealth for my own glory? Or do I want to be remembered for helping make the world a better place? And rather than let that awakening go in one ear and out the other, he decided to transform his life and endow the Nobel Prize for which we and many generations have been the beneficiaries. I share that story because it forms the premise of the book that I wrote. The premise is you're at a funeral. And as you walk out of the funeral, you have a moment when you say to yourself, I hope they speak about me the way they spoke about that individual. I know we're on Zoom right now, but I want to ask you, but if you raise your hand, how many of you have felt that way when you're walking out of a funeral and you say, you know what, not only what are they going to say about me, but you are motivated in that moment to spend time with those that are really important, to focus not on what is urgent, but on truly reflecting on the kind of life that you want to lead. And then generally we're motivated for about 15 minutes until we get a phone call, we get an email, until we forget about that awakening. And the concept behind the book is, what will they say about you when you're gone? We try to identify what is your best self? What is the kind of life we want to lead? And then I take you on a journey of 7 principles to reverse engineer your life so you lead the life now for how you want to be remembered. Life is not meant to be a highlight film. Life is meant to be leading our life with a sense of urgency and purpose on a daily basis. I think we can all go back to those moments. Nobody wants to relive September 11th. But on September 12th, I think we all felt a little bit more about what was truly important. We hugged our families a little bit tighter, and we began really to reflect on the kind of people that we wanted to be. We transcended partisan divide, and we were grateful for every moment that we had. And I believe right now, as a world and as a country, we are also in that sort of moment. There's not a single person who is on this Zoom call, probably not a single person in the world, whose life has not been upended in some way. Nothing in life is certain. This is a moment literally when there's been a universal shift. Things that we felt were certain or uncertain. And the question we have in this moment, and God willing, we will move through this moment, is will we look back on this pandemic and will we say, I just survived this moment? Or will we somehow try to find the ability to harness this moment, to transcend it, to learn from it, and to grow from it? I think about Viktor Frankl's book entitled Man's Search for Meaning. And if you have not read it, I highly recommend you read his book. And there he says, each and every one of us is given a choice. And he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And the question is, how do we realize our best selves in this moment? For me, on a deeply personal level, and Sandy, you alluded to this, I confronted a brush with my mortality over 30 years ago. I thank God I'm blessed with 6 children. We just sent our 3rd daughter to Israel. We now, thank God, have 3 daughters living in Israel who've made Aliyah, which is a real blessing. And I'm also the oldest of 6 children. I grew up in Atlanta, and I came home actually to visit my grandparents at Yeshiva University in 1989 without a care in the world. I was visiting my mother's parents. I came up from the pool at Country Club Drive. Some of you might be familiar with that in Aventura. And I got the worst phone call of my life. That my mother had a brain aneurysm. Then within 24 hours, she had a second brain aneurysm. And then within 48 hours, she passed away. And in that moment, I learned that life can change in an instant. We think that everything is going to be exactly the same. But I began to realize that I could not just move through life without thinking about it enough. And then I always realized my mother was young. But then when I got to the same age as my mother, when I got to the age of 44, I began to more deeply ask this question. Am I doing the most with the life that God has given me to lead a life that reflects the values of who I really want to be so that I can lead a life of legacy? That began the odyssey for this book, both personally and professionally, seeing people. Sometimes as a rabbi, there are people, again, they only come to the rabbi sometimes. Rabbi, I'm going into the hospital. I haven't talked to them for an entire year. And then they'll call me up. And then I won't hear from them after they've gotten out of the hospital. It's not because, God forbid, something happened, but rather because now things are fine. And the question is, how do we take these moments, these awakenings, these crises, and how do we really tune in so that it's not just in that moment of crisis, am I trying to realize my best self, but how do I realize that on a continual basis and lead life with greater purpose, greater meaning, and greater impact? And I want to spend some time with you this evening exploring this journey, really exploring 3 areas. 1, what is the kind of life that we want to lead? How do we want to be remembered? Then I want to take you on a journey and explore 2 principles. 2 principles which are strategies to realizing our best self. One is living inspired, and the second is discovering your Elijah moment. As I said earlier, I am right now speaking to you from Stamford, Connecticut. You are in Memphis. But even though this is virtual, I am sharing with you what's in my heart, and I really hope that it goes into your heart as well. This time is sacred time. I believe that my mother's spirit is very much with me this evening. My father, he should live and be well. And the words that I share are a tribute to her neshama, to her soul. And she lives and breathes through everything that I share with you tonight. And I want to begin by asking a question. And I want you to spend a few moments. I know you have these. Thank you, Sarah, for putting this together. This is my branding effort. Okay, I'm good to go. I also have this too. They sent me all the paraphernalia from Memphis. This is great. I like to talk about a question. I'm going to ask a couple of questions and you can choose one. If there were 5 words that you wanted to be remembered by, what would they be? You know, when I was speaking once before, somebody told me, he said, the 5 words that I want to be remembered by, he said, I want to be remembered as a father, I want to be remembered as a friend, as a son. And then he said to me afterwards, he said, I am a brother. And I forgot to write down that I am a brother and that I have a sister. And in that moment, I realized that that was a relationship that I needed to work more on. Somebody recently came to me from Atlanta. My father and mother were very involved in the yeshiva high school. There's a plaque at the yeshiva high school in Atlanta. And the person went over and said, can you tell me something about Sandy Cohen? And this is what they said about my mom. They said she was a stranger to no one. Those were her 5 words. She was a stranger to no one. Imagine leading our life with that sort of laser focus. Or another question is, if you had 24 hours to live, what would you do and why? I asked this to somebody, and one of the answers that he gave me was, he said, if I had 24 hours to live, what I would do is I would identify those people in my life that made a difference in my life, that maybe I've lost touch with, and I would thank them. And immediately afterwards, everybody in the room said, what are you waiting for? He emailed me the next day, and he said, every day I'm going to try to identify somebody in my life that made a difference, and his life has been transformed. Now you can put the screen back up. And I want everybody to take a few moments. I'm going to read you a poem right now. And this, by the way, is a gift. You know, as a rabbi, sometimes we only think about these things in moments of crisis. But I want you to take a moment now as I read a poem to you entitled The Dash, to think about what are your 5 words. And the poem is by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates of the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time they spent alive on earth. And now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much you own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live in love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard, or the things you like to change. For you never know how much time is left. You could be at dash mid-range. to be less quick to anger and show appreciation more and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things you say about how you spend your dash? So I'm now going to be quiet for a moment, and I would like to ask everybody, we'll just take a minute or two to write down your 5 words. Obviously, this is an opportunity, certainly right now, but God willing one, certainly that's very fitting for this period of time in which we are right now, not only during this crisis, but also during the month of Elul and Rosh Hashanah. The sounding of the shofar is a reminder for us really to do a spiritual check. You know, each and every one of us, if you have a body, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you have a body. Laura, raise your hand so I can see it. I see you right there. Excellent. If you have a soul, raise your hand. We all have a soul. And each one of us has inside of us, we have our soul and our body. And the truth is we oftentimes check, you know, when it comes to different alignments, we check whether it's our bodies to make sure we're exercising properly. We check financially our portfolio multiple times a day. But this is really a gift. It's an opportunity. The mystics say that the soul is compared to the jockey and the body is compared to the horse. The question in life is who's leading who? Is the jockey leading the horse or is the horse leading the jockey? Are we running around just trying to move so quickly that we're really not thinking about who we are and who we want to be? Or do we stay focused on what our goals are? This idea of writing our 5 words is one of the ways to create a sense, as one of the great mystics said, my job in life is not to resurrect the dead. My job in life is to resurrect the living. And being fully aware and cognizant is a way for us to get more in tune with not only who we are now, but realizing our best selves and leading a life of legacy. I'd like to frame the next part of my remarks, those 2 strategies, with a story. The strategies of living inspired and the strategy of discovering your Elijah moment. Because the truth is, we can write these words down. We can think about these words of who we want to be. But the question is, how do we stay fully engaged in living our life at the highest frequency possible? And I want to frame my remarks with something called the secret of the light. That really struck me last summer when I was in Poland on a trip. I went with our synagogue with around 35 people on a trip to Poland. And it was one August day. We were in a town called Markowa. And in Markowa, there was a farmhouse that was there. And the farmhouse was very nondescript as the breeze was blowing and the grass was there and the sun was shining. But little did I know that on that grass, I was walking on holy ground. It was sacred ground right outside that farmhouse where in the early 1940s, heaven was brought down to earth. I will tell you in a moment what happened there, but it really speaks to something called the secret of the light, which to me is one of the keys to leading a life of legacy. The secret of the light is based on an ancient mystical teaching that tells us at the very beginning of time, God created a tremendous light. It says the very beginning of creation, Vayihi Or, that God created light. And then the mystics teach us in Kabbalah that the light was so powerful that the vessels which were containing the light broke. And that light that God emanated into the world was hidden in all places and hidden in all times throughout history. And then God created humanity. God created each and every one of us. And our responsibility, regardless of our faith, as human beings, is to reveal the hidden light which is in the world, to bring hope in places of despair, to bring light in places of darkness. And I felt the secret of the light, that some of that light was revealed at that farmhouse. In the summer of 1942, there was a Jewish family, two Jewish families that knocked on the door of this farmhouse. This farmhouse was owned by a Catholic family, the Olmas, that had 6 children. And in the middle of the night, they heard a knock on the door. And in that moment, they had a choice. Their choice was, do they ignore the calls of this Jewish family, or do they respond to the hidden potential in that moment? And they decided to harbor these 2 Jewish families in their home to protect them from the Nazis who were searching them out for 18 months. And for 18 months, day after day, they risked their life to try to save this Jewish family. At the end of the 18 months, unfortunately, the Nazis came. They murdered the 2 Jewish families, and they also murdered the Olmas. And in that moment, and during that period of time, I truly believe that this family was able to reveal some of that light in that moment that was hidden from the very beginning of time. We are not, thank God, in a state where we have to risk our lives in that way. But the secret of the light reminds us, and it motivates us and inspires us that at any moment, in any time, there is light to be revealed in the world. There is hope to be shared. There is gratitude to be expressed. And when we are aware of that ability to rediscover that light, then our lives cannot be ones in which we just say, I survived, I made it. What did you do today? I don't even know what I did today, but our lives will be filled with so much meaning. And there are 2 strategies that I believe help us connect with what I call the secret of the light. One is called living inspired. Living inspired is something I think we all struggle with, which is the passage of time. Right now, we're near the end of August, and obviously this was a summer that was a very challenging summer for many of us, but at the very beginning of the summer, and again, this is where nobody's plans were exactly the same this summer. That I can say for sure. But there's no question that at the very beginning of the summer, everybody has many different plans. And then as we get towards the end of the summer, it's right near Labor Day. You ask people, so how was your summer? And people will say, well, it went by so fast. It went by so quickly. But the truth is that time cannot be stopped, but time can be slowed down. Some people have Paul McCartney disease and some people have Annie disease. Paul McCartney disease is you ask people how they're doing, and then they'll say, well, yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. I would have, I could have, I should have. And they're thinking about what they could have done. And then other people have Annie disease. You ask them how they're doing, and they'll say, well, tomorrow, things will be better, tomorrow, but they're missing the moment right now. And Judaism teaches us that in any moment, at any time, if we're fully present, we can bring heaven down to earth. Robert Grudem, in his book entitled Time and the Art of Living, he says, ask yourself in this moment, how this moment is going to be remembered years from now. And what am I doing in this moment that is worthy of future memory? That idea of slowing down time and being fully present is critical to realizing the kind of life that we want to lead. And I learned this not only from the Bible, but from JFK Airport, which might seem very strange, but I want to share a story with you. First, it says in the Bible, when Jacob was running away from his brother Esau, it says there that he went to sleep. And when he went to sleep, he woke up and he realized that he had a dream. And in that dream, he woke up and there was a ladder that was going from heaven down to earth. And he said, Achein yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh. God is in this place and I did not know. Herein is the gate to heaven. Jacob realized, somebody could have said, well, what did you do on your trip when you're running away? He said, well, I just went to sleep. But he realized that at any place, at any time, we can bring heaven down to earth. And I learned this so intimately when I was taking one of my daughters on her gap year to Israel at JFK Airport. You know, it's sometimes difficult. You wonder, what are you going to tell your children when you're not going to see them for about 10 months? Goodbye, I love you. If you don't want to speak to them, somebody said, give them your credit card, and then maybe you won't talk to them for 10 months. But then I was so grateful. I still remember exactly where it was. Out of the corner of my eye, Sandy, I'm going to give you a virtual blessing because I can see you right now all the way through this computer to Memphis. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a father putting his hands on his daughter, and he was offering the blessing. And by the way, this is real. I know everybody's muted, but God hears these words. Yivarechacha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and watch over you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God shine his face upon you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha. May God turn to you, v'yasem lecha shalom, and grant you peace. And let us all say, Amen. And by the way, Sandy, you look like you're glowing right now. I mean, you look like a different man. And in that moment, I realized that that's what I wanted to give my daughter. And I'll never forget, I'm grateful I wasn't looking at my phone, and I turned to my daughter and I gave her that blessing. I knew it was right. As I was leaving the airport, I said to myself, that's a blessing that I want to give my children every Friday night. Now you might say to me, well, why don't you just do it every Friday night? Well, here was the challenge. My father's tradition was only to give the blessing to us on the eve of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And I didn't want to divert from his custom. So my father got remarried a couple of years after my mom passed away, and now he lives in Israel in Beit Shemesh. And I called my father on the phone, explained the dilemma. Then my father said this to me in utmost humility. He said, if you have an opportunity to look your child in the eye on a Friday night and give them a blessing, that's what you should do. Then he said to me, if I had to do it all over again, that's what I would have done as well. So from that moment, I started to give blessings to my children from oldest to youngest. My wife goes from youngest to oldest. Sometimes there's a traffic jam. Even if they're in Israel, we call them up. Wherever they are in the world, we give them that blessing. All from one moment in time when my heart was open, and that moment became eternal. Somebody heard this story and wrote me an email, Maury Rosenbaum, and he said, Rabbi, it's not too late for your father to start giving you a blessing. So I called my dad on the phone and I said, I'm in my 40s, you're in your 70s. Would you mind starting to give me a blessing? And my father said to me, he said, I'd love to start giving you a blessing. And then what happens from that moment, every Friday morning, my father's in Israel. My father, by the way, does not call me Rabbi. That's not the way I was born. He says to me, Donnie, I'm going to give you a virtual hug. And from 6,000 miles away, he gives me that blessing. And then hours later, I give that blessing to my children, all from one moment in time. And you know what's really haunting and inspiring is I don't know the name of the man who gave that blessing to his daughter. And I can only imagine he should live and be well, that at the end of his life, when he goes to God and God evaluates his life, God's going to say to him, oh, by the way, you forgot. Remember when you gave that blessing to your daughter in JFK Airport? There was a rabbi there who was watching. And because of that one blessing, so many blessings and light have been unleashed into the world. Living inspired means that we're fully present even in every breath that we take. Every breath is a way which God is saying, I believe you and I love you. There was a story of a 93-year-old man from Italy who recovered recently from COVID. He was leaving the hospital and he was given the bill of $5,000, whatever the currency is, for one day of a ventilator. And when he got the bill, he started to cry. And the doctor said to him, are you crying because you can't pay the bill? And he said, I'm not crying because I can't pay the bill. He said, I have the money to pay. I cry because I've been breathing God's air for 93 years, but I never have to pay for it. It takes $5,000 to use a ventilator in the hospital for one day. Do you know how much I owe God? I didn't thank God for that before. Understanding that in every breath, every moment is an opportunity to be grateful is one of the keys to leading a life of legacy. We're going to try and exercise right now, our second of the evening. And that is to think about this. My daughter, I learned about this, Sarah Malk, who's named after my mom, reminded me of this. And it was actually on a radio show. It was on the Dennis Prager radio show. It was the Happiness Hour. And she was on the phone and he said, this is Sarah from Stamford, Connecticut. I didn't know she did this. What do you do to stay happy? And she said, well, every day I write down something that I'm grateful for, but here's the key. I try not to repeat myself. See, it's easy to say on Tuesday night, thank God I'm alive. Wednesday night, thank God I'm alive. But you don't repeat yourself. You find new blessings. And then he asked her, he said, how many are you up to? And she said, I'm up to close to 800 things to be grateful for in my life. And every night I read 50 of them. How can I not be grateful? So I'd like you to take a moment right now. Either I wrote, describe your best day, but what are you grateful for? Use this as a roadmap every day when you wake up, when we wake up, to know not only to be grateful that we're alive, but truly to realize that every day when God breathes new life in us, God is saying, I believe in you. There's so much for you to accomplish, so much to be grateful for. I like to move. I know these are all exercises that are so important to do on a consistent basis. But again, literally, I think about this, that every breath, and that's, by the way, we understand the sounding of the shofar is God's blowing his breath into us and helping us appreciate the gift of every day. I want to share one final strategy with you tonight, which helps us, again, lead a life of legacy and think about the impact of what we do today. And that's called discovering your Elijah moment. Discovering your Elijah moment is based upon an idea. I call it the standing room only phenomenon at a funeral. Sometimes you're at a funeral and there's a person who's there. Don't necessarily know who the person is. The deceased wouldn't know who they are, but they're there because of one moment in time, that individual made a difference in that person's life. And I call it discovering your Elijah moment based on a beautiful story. Elijah is somebody that comes into your life to make a difference. Some of us may have seen Elijah, certainly at the Seder, or may have seen Elijah at a Brit Milah, a circumcision. But there's a story about a person who went to the mystic, the Baal Shem Tov, and said, I want to see Elijah the prophet. And he said, you want to see Elijah the prophet? I want you to go deep into the forest. There's a widow there with children. And if you provide food for the Sabbath, you'll see Elijah the prophet. He goes there Friday night, Saturday night, still no Elijah. He comes back to the mystic and said, you promised me I would see Elijah. And the mystic says to him, take the food again, go back into the forest, and I promise that this time you'll see Elijah the prophet. It's Friday afternoon. He goes deep into the forest. He's within earshot of the home, and he hears a young child crying out to the mother. And the child turns to the mother and says, Mommy, where are we going to get food from for this Sabbath? And the mother turns to the child and says, just like Elijah came last week, Elijah's going to come again. And it was in that moment that he realized that he was the Elijah that this woman was waiting for. Discovering your Elijah moment means we may not be able to change the world, but each and every one of us can change the world of one person each and every day. A number of years ago, I was up in West Hartford speaking to a group of women, and I asked them about their inspiring moments. And a woman said, I was at a supermarket, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw an elderly man with orthopedic shoes getting out of his car. And I saw his shoes were untied. And I went over and asked if I could tie his shoes. And with tears in her eyes, she said, when I was tying his shoes, in that moment, I felt closer to God than almost ever before in my life. And I explained to her, that was your Elijah moment. Mark Twain says the two most important days of our life are the day when we're born and the day when we understand why. The day we understand why. And when we go into a room, when we have an encounter, that's an opportunity for us to share some of our light and to transform and share some of that with an individual around us. And when we let that light out, it's amazing what can happen and the impact we can create. There's a story called Johnny the Bagger. He's a young man with Down syndrome. He was bagging in a supermarket, and customer service came to try to help motivate people there to be a little more connected. And he wasn't sure what to do. And his father said to him, rather than just put the groceries in the bag, why don't you put some quotes of the day in each bag? Well, lo and behold, Johnny the Bagger's line was the longest bag in the supermarket. And even when people didn't have anything to shop for, they came just to get Johnny's quote. We live in a world where there are so many opportunities to spread that light. And when we spread that light, there's no question that that light will continue to shine. I started a campaign called the Elijah Moment Campaign with a reverend, a friend of mine, and a woman wrote in the following story. She said, I am a NODA, a No One Dies Alone volunteer at Stanford Hospital. We stay with patients who are at the end of their lives, who don't have loved ones available to be with them. We become their loved ones as they leave this world. In September, I sat with a cognitively disabled man several times. At my first visit, he was awake and I fed him vanilla ice cream. By my last visit, he was heavily sedated and nearing the end of his life. I held his hand and somehow felt even more connected to this patient than to others I had sat with. A few weeks ago, I shared my experience with my family and found out that this gentleman's father was the doctor who delivered me in Stanford Hospital in 1956. His father was there to help my arrival into this world, and I was there to help his son's departure 58 years later. That was my Elijah moment. The opportunities are endless. Just want to conclude with two other stories. Again, before COVID, I was in the Philadelphia train station, and I guess I looked like a person who was very charitable. And there was a man who came over to me and said, would you mind buying me dinner? And I said to him, there was a Dunkin' Donuts there. I said, how about Dunkin' Donuts? And he said, how about the Cajun food? I prefer that instead. And I said to him, okay, I'll get you the Cajun food. And I went and got him the food. And then I said to him afterwards, I said, what's your name? He said, his name is Sam. And I said, Sam, God bless you. And Sam turned to me and said, God has already blessed me. God has sent me you. God has sent me you. There's not a single person who doesn't have something unique to contribute. Legacy is not only financial. Legacy is about making sure that we enable people that are with us to leave feeling better about their life than when they first met us. And the more Elijah moments that we can create, we can not change the world. We can lament the darkness. The world is going through so many challenges. But our role, the Elijah moment, is to increase the light each and every day. It says that at the very beginning of our lives, that light that we spoke about is taught to us by an angel that's inside. And then right before each of us are born, there's an angel that comes and taps us right underneath our nose. And the mystics say that that light then is not forgotten fully, but it's buried deep inside. And then at the very end of our lives, we're all going to be greeted by an angel. And we're going to recognize that angel. That's the angel that planted the light inside of us before we were born. And the angel is going to ask each and every one of us two questions. The angel is going to ask us, did you reveal the light that was within you? Did you become the best that you can be to live inspired, to try to make every day a great day, and to be grateful for the breath and the gift of life? And the second question the angel is going to ask us is, did we share that light with the world? Did we make sure that every day we did the best that we could to spread that light and help make the world a better place? I want to bless everybody here with not only waiting, God willing, for a moment of crisis, but to lead our best lives now. There's so much potential on this Zoom room right now, so much. And I want you to take a moment. I want you to think, this is it. We're bringing it home right now. I want you to think right now of one person in your life who maybe you need to call, or who maybe you want to touch. And we'll take 30 seconds right now. Somebody who maybe could use a little bit of a pickup. Somebody who's struggling. And I want you to write that name down right now. I'll give you 30 seconds to do that. Put a name down. And after you write the name down, I'm giving you permission right now. I want you to take your phone and I want you to text that person or email that person right now. And I want to let them know you're thinking about them and wishing them just wonderful things. And if we can harness these moments, to truly discover the light, God willing, I know not only will we lead lives to how we want to be remembered, and not only will we survive, God willing, this moment, but we will thrive during this moment in time. God will bless us. We'll harness these opportunities for growth, not lament the darkness, but rather increase the light. And God willing, God will shine his face upon us, and each and every one of us will lead lives of legacy now and forever. Thank you very much, and Mazel Tov on your wonderful celebration.
Rabbi Cohen, thank you very much for joining us this evening, for your insightful commentary and the inspiring words that you shared. I am Charles Jelinek, a past chair of the Jewish Foundation of Memphis, and I'm here to present the newly established Raymond Shainberg Professional Advisor Award. This award will be given out in the future to a professional advisor who has demonstrated extraordinary leadership, dedication, and commitment to the foundation. Raymond Shainberg of blessed memory was one of the founding leaders of the Jewish Foundation. The impact he had on our entire Jewish community is significant and likely not evident to most. He was a rare, behind-the-scenes leader. Raymond was the go-to person for all things related to charitable estate planning, complex gifting strategies, charitable gift agreements, and more. He spent hours with foundation leaders figuring out very complex estate planning issues when there was charitable gift involved. Without Raymond Shainberg, the Jewish Foundation would not be what it is today. He was instrumental in creating our Donor Advised Fund program, our Legacy Initiative, and in helping professionalize the foundation with the creation of the Professional Advisory Group. Due to his involvement, all of our local Jewish institutions are benefiting and will continue to benefit for many years to come. And it is for this reason the Jewish Foundation has created the award in his name. Outside of his exemplary career as an attorney, he always made time for community work and his family. He was an outstanding attorney, a terrific person, and a great dad to his 5 children, Nancy, Kathy of blessed memory, Paul, Andrew, and Robin. On a personal level, I just want to say that, I worked with Raymond and I enjoyed working with him on foundation issues and other issues. And I was always in awe of his intelligence and his creativity. Also, as a kid, I remember going over to his house many times to visit my good friend, his son, Andrew. And whenever I was there, I always listened to and appreciated the nuggets of wisdom that Raymond shared. Raymond personified the ideal professional advisor to the Jewish Foundation. And I'm honored to present the first Professional Advisor Award to Raymond Shainberg posthumously and to his family tonight in his memory. And for this award to now be named after him as the Raymond Shainberg Professional Advisor Award.
Thank you, Charles. I'm Anthony Morrison, and Rabbi Cohen, I want to say that I'm grateful for your beautiful words today, and I'm also grateful for this community, to this community, for allowing me to be chairman of the board this year of Jewish Foundation. Between now and the end of the year, I challenge you to take the words you wrote on the bookmark and take action. Sit with your family. Talk about your life and what it means to you. What has the Memphis Jewish community done for you? What do you want to give back? Think about your personal legacy plan. Contact the staff at Jewish Foundation. They will pair you with the right professional advisor, whether it be an insurance agent, an estate planning attorney, or a financial advisor. Work with the foundation to make sure you are creating a life of legacy. The foundation has been here for 25 years to help you in the Memphis Jewish community, and will be here in the future to do the same. Thank you for celebrating the 25th anniversary with us, and have a great night.
Let me tell you what I wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? President Jefferson,
I'll give him this. His financial system is a work of genius. I couldn't undo it if I tried. And I tried.
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? President Madison.
He took our country from bankruptcy to prosperity. I hate to admit it, but he doesn't get enough credit for all the credit he gave us.
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
Every other founding father's story gets told. Every other founding father gets to grow old.
And when you're gone, who remembers your name? Who keeps your flame? Who tells your story? Who tells your story? Who tells your story?
Eliza, I put myself back in the narrative. I stop wasting time on tears. I live another 50 years. It's not enough. I interview every soldier who fought by your side.
She tells our story.
I try to make sense of your thousands of pages of writings. You really do write, but you're running out of time. I rely on Angelica. While she's alive, we tell your story. She is buried in Trinity Church near you. When I needed her most, she was right on time. And I'm still not through. I ask myself, what would you do if you had more time? The Lord in his kindness, he gives me what you always wanted. He gives me more time. I raise funds in D.C. for the Washington Monument.
She tells my story.
I speak out against slavery. You could have done so much more if you only had time. And when my time is up, have I done enough? Will they tell your story? Oh, can I show you what I'm proudest of?
The orphanage.
I established the first private orphanage in New York City.
The orphanage.
I helped raise hundreds of children. I get to see them growing up.
The orphanage.
In their eyes I see you, Alexander. I see you every time. And when my time is up, have I done enough? Will they tell your story? Oh, I can't wait to see you again. It's only a matter of time.
Will they tell your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Will they tell your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
Is this the little girl I carried? Is this the little boy at play?
I don't remember growing older.
she get to be a beauty? When did he grow to be so tall?
Wasn't it yesterday when they were small?
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly flow the days, sailing strand over land to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze.
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly the years. One season following another, laden with happiness and tears.
What words of wisdom can I give them? How can I help to ease their way?
Now they must learn from one another, day by day.
They look so natural together.
Just